Well, this is comical. I got a letter from Google. Dear Jay, we've determined that your post may be in violation of our user content and conduct policy. Conduct that transmits viruses or contains malware or other malicious code is not permitted. Continued violation of our policies can lead to the loss of your ability to use some or all features of Google+. Yours sincerely, the Google+ team. Of course, there's no viruses or malware on this page. It's just an excuse to shut it down. It doesn't seem like there's any way I can respond to this, although I'm going to try and figure that out, because it's obviously nonsense, right? On the obviously contrived takedown threat, it may actually be more than a triviality. I do have reason to think that there are organizations that believe I'm attached to some kind of foreign agency, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the reality that I don't have a mobile signal. So I've noticed, I've been jammed. I'm pretty sure I've had cops following me around in Detroit even. Like I had a cop follow me around on a bus the other day, and it was just kind of like, we want to know where you're going, and we can't follow you because you don't have a tracking device. It's really consistent with a big collection of coincidences, okay? Going back actually quite a ways. And I get that I'm not remotely brainwashed. I've been ranting. Who knows how long you've been, kind of tuned into here? I've been ranting all over the internet for 20 years almost, okay? And it's been nearly that long that I've noticed that some people are kind of following me around a little bit. There's actually a few different rants on this YouTube channel about this. You can take a look back and see that they're labeled properly in the reacts. And one of them about the psychologist is pretty key. And even beyond the sort of I feel I've been flagged. Okay, and I know that all crazy people say that, but I think it's accurate in my case. So I get that I'm not remotely brainwashed, so there's reasons to follow me around. But the assumption from what I can gather is that I don't have a mobile signal because I'm using some kind of foreign blocking software through some kind of foreign network. So they think there's a signal underneath it, but it's being blocked. So they're trying to get through it, trying to jam me, trying to follow me around. It's just, and I do seem to I post a lot of I haven't been recently, but I will often post geopolitical analyses that may be considered challenging to the gatekeepers. And like I said, I don't consume any of that media, so I just don't I don't even really know what the brainwashing is. I don't know what I'm supposed to think. I just go to sources that I trust. I'm completely outside of their control, right? But if you operate from the assumption that they've got everything under control, and the masses are a bunch of sheep, and they think what we tell them to think, all this sort of thing, then the only way I make any sense is if I'm working for the Russians or I don't know who else. I think that I probably think I'm working for the Russians, right? Because I don't make any sense any other way. Because I don't repeat anything, right? I don't repeat the official story. I don't repeat the sanctioned counter story. I actually seem to have some idea what's going on. So therefore, I must be working for a foreign intelligence agency, right? Except, of course, that's not actually true, right? And I've actually been really transparent about this. Anybody that's really trying to listen in or pay attention is going to see pretty quickly that it's totally I'm behind a router, but it's I don't go out of my way to hide any sort of communication. Nothing's encrypted. I'm not hiding anything. I'm actually very transparent. I just actually simply honestly don't have mobile internet devices. I don't have your tracking devices. So you can't follow me around because I'm not carrying around, these little spying devices that you want us to carry around. What do I have? Well, I have an MP3 player without an internet connection. This little guy here is an old Sansa. It's a 2 gigabyte flash drive. And I made a conscious decision. I don't want an iPod because I don't want the proprietary software. But I don't want any software at all. I just want to plug it in and let it read it as a drive. It's great. Very easy, very simple. But there's no internet in it. Okay. But I do think that they assumed that it had internet on it, and they tried to hack it through the radio. I'm not joking. I'm pretty sure that's something that actually happened. I also have this camera here that I'm talking into. It has no internet connection to it, or at least if it does have an internet connection, I don't know how to access it. Right. I have a very old flip phone that is technically internet capable, but I've never actually connected with it, and I haven't had service on it in over 10 years. So you might see me walking around with a phone. I use it as a clock. It's the only thing I use it for. It's the only clock I have. Why don't I have a phone? I'm not that old. Should I have a phone? Well, it's a combination of economics and utility. See, that's the other part of the equation, right? It's incomprehensible that I don't have a phone. Like it's beyond, Everybody has a phone. I'm young. I'm maybe not particularly cool, but I would fall into the demographic. The type of person you would expect would have a phone, right? I'm kind of geeky. Although I'm actually really not geeky. I'm very nerdy. But something you'll notice if you follow these vlogs is I don't really have any interest at all in geek culture. In any way, really. None of the music I listen to is really geeky. None of the I don't. Have I mentioned a film in 7 months or what is it now? What 6 and 8 months worth of vlogging? Have I even mentioned the concept of film? I haven't seen a movie in years. My internet presence is mostly political and musical. Like I don't go to those places on the internet, right? So the truth is, I'm not a geek. I'm a nerd. So that's a bit of a difference, right? The only person I've ever seen or I've ever heard articulate my perspective about phones is the FX twin, Richard D. James. They asked him, and he's known for taking the piss, right? He may have been fucking with the interviewer, but he basically said what my perspective. I don't think he was, because what he said was basically exactly what I've been saying for years, which is, what do you do with a phone? People talk about, is this great? Like they asked him, do you have a mobile phone? And he was like, no. And they're like, well, why not? He said, well, what would I do with it? I don't see a utility for it, right? So why don't I have a phone? It is a combination of economics. I don't have the money for it, and they're not cheap. Canada has high mobile phone costs due to regulatory capture. The phone companies, there's a small number of companies that would offer service. They control the regulatory bodies, and they've jacked the price right up. We have no competition. Because that's what regulatory bodies do, is they prevent competition. Not that I think that's the answer anyways. I actually think the answer is we need more public, we need more democracy in the lines, right? So we need less control, less regulation. Anyways, but not less regulation in a market sense, more like less regulation, and we don't. Like we should be able to. A phone company is a mobile phone company is something that I should be able to set one up in my backyard, and send it out to people around me. I shouldn't need a network. This whole thing, right? It's just it's too it's not controlled in a market access sense. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's more that it's controlled in like a military sense. Right, we need to have less focus on national security and more focus on just freedom to use technology. So yeah, it's not cheap here. and that's a problem here, and we know it's a problem, and people are approaching it from different perspectives. But it's also utility. Like I don't see a use for it. Okay, I was in school from 2008 to 2011. Didn't have money to spend on mobile phones. Then went through a mental breakdown in mid 2011. I ended up getting I didn't get evicted. I say I got evicted. I removed myself because I knew that the mental state that I was in was going to prevent me from paying rent for quite some time. I just got up to a brick wall. I was like, I can't, I could keep trying to, figure out a way kind of thing, or I could just, cut my losses and start again. I stayed with my grandmother for a few years, and I didn't really come out of that until late 2012. And I could have gotten a phone at any point since then, but I lived so long without one, and so long with small incomes that I didn't want one, and I still just don't want one. That's my honest perspective on a phone. A cell phone is a waste of money. I know that makes me sound like an old person. Maybe I am an old person at heart, but I don't see the use to it. I'm sorry. It's just a waste of money that I could spend on more interesting things like concerts or drugs. If my monthly income doubled or something, I might think about getting one, but I'd be unlikely to get a provider, right? So even if I got a phone, I still wouldn't go through, the government network. Or the private network, government network, whatever, they're the same thing. Private sector, public sector, what's the difference, right? But it'd be unlikely to get a provider. What I do is the only telecommunications access I have is a VoIP mailbox, right? You're out there with Anonymous, you want to hack me, go find my VoIP box. That's the only thing you got, right? And what the VoIP box does is it sends a voice message to my email, and that's my phone. When I want to take phone calls out, I would use something like Google has a VoIP. I can't remember what it's called, but Google Voice. I'd be happy just using Google Voice with a VoIP. See, I told you I'm a nerd, right? This is very nerdy, but I'm not a geek. I don't have that, like devices and cartoon characters or whatever it is that geeks like. It's not my thing, right? Like you'll never see me in a cosplay or anything like that, right? Even the music I listen to is not geeky. It's nerdy. So I would set something like that up on Google Voice and just, use it with a microphone and a laptop. In fact, I've considered getting a VoIP phone. I will one day get a VoIP phone, probably. But I mean, then what's the point of getting a VoIP phone and a cell phone, right? I'll at some point when I've got some extra money take a look at it and say, okay, do I want to get a cell phone and then hook it up with the VoIP, or do I actually want to get a VoIP and use it as a landline, possibly even connect it to an old laptop, and I could set that up, right? But I wouldn't want to get an internet provider, right? So I wouldn't want to pay on a monthly bill. That's just a huge waste of money for me. I wouldn't use it for anything. I'd just be throwing the money away. So even if I did have extra income, it would still be a waste of money. If my monthly income tripled or quadrupled, it would still just be a waste of money. Like I can't get around this perspective that I don't feel that this is money that I'm using. Now, if I did decide to get a cell phone and I found myself using it a lot at the Tim Hortons, I may change my mind, right? If I get used to it and I start using it, and but I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think that what's more likely is that if I find myself in a situation where I'm stuck somewhere overnight, it might be useful to watch YouTube or something for a few hours. What I do right now, if I get stuck somewhere overnight, is I bring a book. What I might do instead, it would be I read up on something on the internet instead, right? But besides that, I don't sit in places in public. It's just not something I do, right? If I'm sitting on the bus, I'd rather listen to music. And I spend so much time in Detroit when I'm out that it's just kind of, I'd have to buy service in the States or something. Like, I don't even know how that would work. I know I could, if I go through a public, I can do it from there, right? Public Wi-Fi is public Wi-Fi. It doesn't matter what country you're from. But that's what I would do, right? So, very nerdy, and it would actually, like, my monthly bill would be zero, and I would ensure that it is, because I'd just use a combination of WIPE and public Wi-Fi, and then just make sure that I'm not, banking at the Tim Hortons or whatever, right? That would be stupid. But like I say, like, this isn't, I'm not avoiding data collection. Like, this isn't some scheme to stop the CIA from spying on me. Look at what I'm doing, for fuck's sake. I'm running a vlog. I'm uploading details of my daily life. I'm doing it to promote my music, right? I'm trying to turn myself into a character, a personality, a persona, right? I'm more interested, not only am I not interested in privacy, I'm purposely working against it, right? So, and like, why do I not have a tracking device? It's not because I don't want you to follow me. I don't care if you follow me. You want to watch me? You want to follow me to the concert? I might suggest that your resources are being squandered, and that it would be a better idea for you to understand that and, redeploy, right? And in fact, that's the perspective that I take. I think it's better to avoid encryption in case of misunderstanding. I would prefer open data transmission. What actually frightens me is this scenario. This is the scenario that scares me. It's the scenario that I've got encrypted data. Okay? The CIA or the NSA or, some cross-border agency, RCMP, whatever, has got me under surveillance. They think I'm working for a foreign agency or a terrorist group or something. And read my rating. I can be pretty belligerent and pretty outside the official discourse, right? I think that it's a pretty big. Like I say, I've got a vlog up. I think that if you watch my vlog, it's pretty obvious that I'm not much of a threat to anybody except perhaps myself. But I can understand why somebody before they do the research, might come across a rant that I wrote or an argument that I was in or something, and flag me and say, okay, this is somebody that we should keep an eye on. I understand that, right? And there's probably actually relatively good a reason for that. Okay, I'm actually not going to push back against that too far. All right, so let's say that happens. Okay, my fear is that if these surveillance companies can't get good information, like the vlogs, right, then they might come to wrong conclusions. If they read some article that I wrote or some essay or some comment somewhere that I wrote, and they misinterpret it, and then they look at my data and they can't get a data stream, and then they have to connect dots, right? They have to take guesses. And I don't have a lot of faith in the ability of these groups, right? I don't think the RCMP or the CIA or the CSIS or the NSA or whatever, I don't think that they're, this this giant leviathan that functions as a perfect machine, and like, that's not my perception of them. My perception of them is that they're broadly incompetent, that they're mostly run by career bureaucrats. It's a lot of people that have average to below average intelligence. Look at the way they test people, right? They test people for ability to obey authority. There have been cases where cops have been thrown out of the force because their IQ is too high. That's something that has actually happened, right? They fired cops because their IQ test and it's too high, because that's not what they want. What they want is obedience, right? They want obedient thugs that'll do what they're told. And it's the same as at the NSA as it is, with the frontline police officers. So my interpretation of these agencies and my impression of what they are is that they're mostly idiots, right? Not, it's not the X-Files. It's, more just a broad collection of incompetence. They don't talk to each other properly. The agencies are not integrated. Data gets lost all over the place. So when you're dealing with that kind of a scenario, there's it amplifies the possibility of misunderstanding. And what I worry about, like I say, what I worry about is not that the government has a file. I don't care if the government has a file. What I worry about is that the government's file is wrong. And instead of interpreting me as, a harmless, bohemian, eccentric, that they interpret me as something dangerous, and I get shot by a bunch of dipshit cops because they don't have the right kind of data. So I don't want to hide data from them. I want to get as much data to them as I possibly can, so that there's no possibility, or a minimal possibility, there's always going to be some possibility of misunderstanding and misinterpretation, right? I want it to be absolutely clear that I am what I am, and absolutely clear that I'm not what I'm not. Okay? So this lack of a phone, lack of a tracking device, has nothing to do with not wanting to be tracked. It has nothing to do with fearing the Secret Service, the Stasi, or whatever, right? It's just because I would consider paying for voice or data to be a waste of money. It's purely financial. And there are perfectly good free options, right? If I had a phone, I would know how to set it up with VoIP. And I would. All told, it's going to cost me something like $2 a month if I do it that way. I'd hate to call myself a fiscal conservative. I'm not. But you do learn how to maximize the resources when you don't have a lot of them, right? My monthly income is not going to double either. Well, I say that, but they are talking about a GAI in Canada. It might. I will probably end up buying a used Android for public Wi-Fi one day, but I couldn't see myself paying more than $30 for it. It's just simply not worth more than $30 for me. Like I say, I don't know where I'd use it. Stock overnight in Detroit once in a while. If I had a phone, I'd use it once every 2 or 3 months. That's the actual truth, okay? I would not be the person that's stuck on their phone all the time. I have a laptop. I'm at home most of the time. I'd rather use that. So I'll likely pick up like a late OO's model sometime around 2020 over a Kijiji or something, Somebody that's trying to get rid of it. And then sit on it for most of the rest of my life. I couldn't see why I'd want to upgrade it. In fact, I'd want to make sure that I get a device that isn't pushing down upgrades, because I don't want it upgraded. And if I can't find a device that won't push down upgrades, then I probably won't get one. Now, you could point out that I don't have any friends, that I don't have a job, so this is a function of that, right? Of course, I don't need a phone. Well, I don't have any. I'm not connected to anybody. Okay, but it's more like a reinforcing truth, right? Part of the reason I lost touch with people is that I didn't see the use in buying a phone, and kind of wrote the whole mobile device thing off as a fad. Conversely, if I did have a phone, I'd probably, it happens actually fairly frequently that I'm out at the bar, I'm watching a show, I'm having a smoke out the back, and talking to somebody, and they ask me for my number. I don't have a phone, right? Maybe I would, meet some more people if I had that device. But I'm not. It's not really that important to me, right? I'm staunchly introverted, right? in the end, I still think the mobile phone is an unstable platform. It doesn't have a future. It's just hung around a lot longer than I thought it would. I don't really get it, right? People use these little, they try to watch movies on these little, like it's, I don't know what's going to replace this. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that it took off in the first place. Like I don't know what like is going to be the turnaround on it, but I still just don't. I don't understand why people are so attached to their phones like the way they are. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I never thought that would happen, and in the long run, I can't see it's maybe a good way to think of it is like this. A couple of years ago, people were on Facebook all the time, right? Posting all kinds of nonsense all the time. Nowadays, you take a look through Facebook and you don't see those kinds of status updates, right? People don't do that anymore. And so what replaced it? Nothing really replaced it. It's just that people stopped doing it. And I think that in the long run, that's probably kind of what you're going to see with phones, right? I think that people are going to kind of grow out of it. And it's not clear how the younger generation is going to react, right? I didn't think that it would be as successful as it's been. I thought it would be a very fleeting fad. Turns out it may turn out to be a longer term fad, but I still think that, the cell phone, I think it's a fad. I'm sorry. I know that you're going to call me a nut if you're nice. But I'm sorry. I don't see a future for the mobile phone. I don't. So there's not some ingenious trickery, about my lack of a mobile device. Yeah, it's true. I'm a half credit short of a programming degree. Okay. But the right way to look at that is that I dropped out of a programming degree. Because that's what I did, was I dropped out of a programming degree, a half credit short. Why? Because I really wasn't interested in the topic. It wasn't the programming part, it was the business part. The half credit that I'm short is the school that I went to had one course where you had to emulate a business environment, which meant working in a team to do a presentation and a thing. And I tried to take that course 3 times and I couldn't deal with the people, right? And you can kind of say, well, what does that have to do with programming? It might not have anything to do with the act of programming, but it taught me that I'm not going to succeed in a programming work environment. That's what it taught me, right? That this isn't a job. I had the perspective, like in my mind, I was thinking I can get a job as probably more like a network admin kind of thing, where I'm working by myself, right? Because I don't want to work in a team. I don't want to work with people. I'm too introverted. I hate people. And that half credit, like I say, it was just, I got to that. I tried to take that course 3 times and I couldn't deal with the people aspect of it. And I just came to the conclusion that what's the point? I could torture myself to get the piece of paper, but if I can't do this, if I can't work with people, then the piece of paper is of no use, right? Because that's what a programming job is like in the real world, right? But I mean, ultimately what that means is that I'm not interested in the topic too, right? If you were to show me the code I'm supposed to be writing, the truth is that I actually probably wouldn't understand it because I haven't taken courses in. I mean, I like where would you inject code into YouTube? Like, what, you're gonna write it in Perl? I haven't taken a course in Perl. These are languages I don't understand. I understand Java, object-oriented programming. I took some courses in C, right? But like web page programming, I didn't study that. I really am just a poor trans person in my mid-30s from Canada that likes to type and happens to be relatively good at articulating myself. What you see is what you get. Nothing under the hood. No connections with shady Russians. And I'm actually very transparent. Like I say, if you are watching this from a distance, I'm easy to hack because I don't encrypt anything. Because I have the belief that I don't want to hide information from intelligence services. I want intelligence services to understand that I'm harmless and react appropriately, not, misinterpret me as something I'm not and shoot me in the face because of it.